In this video, we will learn 10 new words through short stories. It might seem like a small step, but in 100 days, you will easily learn 1,000 words, which is a big achievement. To help you learn better, please watch each video twice. At the end of the video, try to make your own sentences using the new words you've learned. Stay with us and let's explore today's new words. The unexpected protagonist. When I started writing my first story, I never thought I would become the protagonist of my own tale. The protagonist, as you may know, is the main character in a story, the one who faces challenges and drives the plot forward. At that time, I thought protagonists only lived in books and movies. But I was wrong. It all began when I moved to a new city. I had no friends, no family nearby, and no job. I felt lost. One rainy evening, I walked into a small library to escape the cold. I saw a group of people sitting in a circle, laughing and reading together. Curious, I sat down quietly. The leader of the group smiled and said, "Welcome. What's your name?" I hesitated. I didn't want to speak. My English wasn't good, and I was afraid of making mistakes. "Don't worry," she said kindly. "Every protagonist begins their journey feeling unsure. But they grow stronger by facing challenges." Her words stayed with me. Was I a protagonist? Could I really change my life? The next week, I returned to the library. This time, I joined the group. We read stories, and each time, I noticed how the protagonist never gave up, no matter how hard things got. Slowly, I started speaking more. My English improved, and so did my confidence. One day, the group leader asked me to write my own story. At first, I was scared, but then I realized I was already living my story. I wrote about how I became the protagonist of my life. Now, when I look back, I understand. Every person is a protagonist. We all face challenges, and we all have the power to grow and succeed. So, who is the protagonist of your story? It's you. Remember, the protagonist isn't perfect, they're brave. They keep going, and so can you.
Facing the antagonist. When I was a child, I loved reading stories. Every story had a hero, but there was always an antagonist too. The antagonist is the character who creates problems for the hero, making their journey harder. Back then, I thought antagonists only lived in stories. But then I met my own antagonist. It happened last year. I had just started my new job and everything felt exciting. But then there was Mark. Mark was my coworker and my antagonist. He wasn't mean in an obvious way. Instead, he would smile and say things like, "Are you sure you can do that? It seems too hard for you." Or, "Wow, you made a mistake again? Don't worry, you'll learn someday." First, I tried to ignore him, but his words stayed in my mind. Every time I tried to work, I could hear his voice. "You can't do this." Mark became my antagonist, not because he was stronger, but because he made me doubt myself. One day, I decided enough was enough. I stayed late at the office, practicing my presentation for an important meeting. When the day came, I stood in front of everyone, including Mark, and spoke confidently. Presentation went well, and my boss praised me. After the meeting, Mark came up to me and said, "I didn't know you could do that." I smiled and replied, "Every story needs an antagonist to make the hero stronger." That day I learned something important. The antagonist isn't always a person. Sometimes the antagonist is fear, doubt, or even our own negative thoughts. But just like in every story, the hero you can overcome the antagonist by staying strong and believing in themselves. So who is your antagonist? And how will you defeat them?
The taste of irony. It's funny how life works sometimes, isn't it? The irony of my story still makes me laugh and cry a little. Let me tell you what happened. I always wanted to be a chef. Cooking was my passion. I believed I was the best cook in my small town. But here's the irony. I couldn't taste food. Yes, you heard me right. Since I was a child, I had no sense of taste. Sweet, salty, spicy, nothing. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I thought, who would trust a chef who can't taste? The irony of my dream didn't stop me. I worked hard, learning recipes and following measurements perfectly. People loved my food. Amazing, they'd say. They didn't know the irony behind my success. One day, a famous food critic visited our town. He came to my small restaurant and ordered the chef's special. I was so nervous. What if he didn't like it? The irony was, I wouldn't even know if it tasted good or bad. As he took his first bite, he paused. My heart raced. Then, he smiled and said, "This is perfection. The flavors are bold yet balanced. You must have an incredible sense of taste." The irony hit me so hard that I almost laughed. I smiled politely and said, "Thank you." Years later, I finally shared my secret in a TV interview. The host asked, "How could you become such a great chef without tasting your food?" I replied, "That's the irony of my life. I succeeded in a field where I was supposed to fail." Irony can be cruel, but it can also be beautiful. It shows us how life is full of surprises, like a story with an unexpected twist. So, if you ever face irony in your life, remember, it might be leading you to something great.
The weight of tragedy. I used to think tragedy only happened in books or movies. Tragedy felt like something distant, something that could never touch my life. But I was wrong. It was a sunny morning when the tragedy struck. My younger brother, Liam, left the house with a smile. He was going to a park to meet his friends. "I'll be back for dinner," he said cheerfully. But that was the last time I saw him. Car accident changed everything. The news came like a storm, destroying our happiness. Liam was gone. Losing him was the greatest tragedy of my life. I couldn't understand how such a joyful day could end in such sorrow. For weeks our house was silent. My parents barely spoke, and I spent most of my time in Liam's room, surrounded by his things. The tragedy didn't just take him away. It took away our smiles, our laughter, and the warmth in our home. But one day, as I sat in his room, I found his notebook. Liam loved writing stories. The last one he wrote was titled "Finding Light in Tragedy." It was about a girl who lost her best friend but learned to honor his memory by living a meaningful life. Reading his story made me realize something. Tragedy doesn't have to define us. It's painful, yes, but it can also teach us strength, love, and resilience. I started volunteering at a community center, helping children with challenges. Slowly, I felt Liam's spirit in everything I did. Now, when I think of tragedy, I see it as a reminder. Life is fragile, but it's also precious. Even in the darkest moments, we can find light. Liam's tragedy taught me to live fully, for him and for myself.
The power of satire. When I was younger, I thought laughter was just for fun. I never realized that laughter could be a weapon. Then I discovered satire. Satire, as I learned, is a way to criticize or expose something wrong using humor. My life changed because of it. It started in college. My town was small, and the mayor was known for making big promises but never keeping them. He said he would fix the roads, but they stayed broken. He promised parks, but we got parking lots instead. Everyone complained, but no one did anything. One day, during a school event, I performed a comedy skit. I turned the mayor's promises into satire. I pretended to be him, saying, "Why fix the roads? Holes make driving exciting. And who needs trees when we have concrete?" The crowd roared with laughter. But the satire wasn't just funny. It made people think. "You're right," a friend said. "We deserve better." My little act of satire sparked conversations all over town. A week later, the mayor showed up at our school. He smiled, but I could tell he wasn't happy. "I saw your little performance," he said. "You think you're clever?" I was nervous, but I stood my ground. "It was satire," I replied. "Maybe if you kept your promises, I wouldn't have anything to joke about." To my surprise, he didn't get angry. Instead, he promised to listen to the town's concerns. And for the first time, he actually did something. He fixed the roads. That day, I realized the true power of satire. It's not just about making people laugh. It's about making people see the truth. And sometimes, truth can change everything.
The mystery of the motif. Art has always been my passion. My paintings are like pieces of my soul, each one with a special meaning. But one word kept appearing in my life: motif. First, I didn't fully understand it. What is a motif? How does it fit into my art? The answer came to me in the strangest way. I had been working on a large canvas for weeks. It was chaotic, bright colors, abstract shapes, and no clear focus. "What's the story here?" asked my best friend Clara. I had no answer. That night, I dreamed of my grandmother's quilt. She had passed away when I was a child, but her quilt was unforgettable. It had one motif repeated across it: a small red bird flying in a golden sky. Every square told a part of the same story. When I woke up, I realized what my painting was missing: a motif. A motif isn't just a single detail. It's a repeated element that ties everything together. Could be a color, a shape, or even an idea. Gives art a purpose. I painted red birds across the chaotic canvas, just like in my grandmother's quilt. Suddenly, the painting came to life. The red birds weren't just decoration. They were the motif, connecting every part of the artwork. At my next art show, people kept saying, "These birds feel so powerful. They make the painting complete." I smiled, knowing the motif had done its job. Since then, every painting I create has a motif. It reminds me that even in the chaos of life, there are patterns, connections, and meaning. A motif doesn't just belong in art, it's everywhere if you know where to look.
The journey to proficiency. When I first moved to the city, I couldn't speak a word of English. I felt lost in conversations, and every task felt impossible. But I had a dream: to achieve proficiency in English. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was determined. My journey began at a small language school. On the first day, the teacher asked me to introduce myself. I froze. The words wouldn't come. "Don't worry," she said. "Proficiency doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, and every step matters." I practiced every day. I listened to English songs, watched movies with subtitles, and wrote short sentences in my notebook. Slowly I improved. At first, I could only say simple phrases like, "How are you?" or "Where is the bus stop?" But as time went on, I gained more confidence. One day, I joined a conversation group. I was nervous, but it was the best decision I ever made. Speaking with others helped me understand what true proficiency means. It's not just about knowing words, it's about using them naturally, without fear. Months later, my teacher gave me a surprise: a certificate of proficiency. "You've worked so hard," she said. "This shows how far you've come." But I knew proficiency wasn't just about a piece of paper. It was about feeling at home in a language, about expressing myself fully. Now I speak English every day. I help new students who feel as lost as I once did. I tell them, proficiency isn't magic. It's practice, patience, and belief in yourself. Looking back, I see how much I've grown. Proficiency didn't just change my language skills, it changed my life.
The mystery of the syllabus. I had never been so excited to start a course. It was a creative writing class, something I had dreamed of for years. On the first day, the professor walked in holding a stack of papers. "This," she said, waving the pages, "is your syllabus. It will guide you through this course." As I read the syllabus, I noticed it was divided into weeks, each with a theme: storytelling, character development, and dramatic endings. The syllabus wasn't just a list, it was a map. It showed me exactly what to expect and how to prepare for each lesson. But halfway through the course, I hit a wall. Writing became harder and my ideas felt dull. I turned to the syllabus, hoping for inspiration. Week 6, Overcoming Writer's Block. I smiled. The syllabus wasn't just a guide, it was a lifeline. During class, I asked the professor, "Why is the syllabus so detailed?" She smiled and said, "The syllabus is like the backbone of a course. It's there to keep you on track, even when you feel lost." By the final week, I had written my best story yet. As I handed it in, I realized how much the syllabus had shaped my journey. It didn't just organize the course, it gave me a clear path and the confidence to follow it. Now, whenever I start something new, I ask, "Where's the syllabus?" 'Cause I know a good syllabus can turn confusion into clarity and goals into achievements.
The power of mentoring. When I first started working as a teacher, I had no idea how much mentoring would change my life. I thought I was just there to teach. But one day, a quiet boy named Alex changed everything. Alex sat in the back of the class, avoiding eye contact and never raising his hand. After class, I called him over. "Alex," I said, "you're struggling with English, right?" He nodded silently. "How about some mentoring after school?" I asked. He hesitated, then agreed. During our first mentoring session, I learned that Alex loved drawing. He showed me a sketchbook full of amazing art. "Your talent is incredible," I said. "Let's use your drawings to improve your English." We started creating stories for his characters, turning mentoring into a fun, creative process. Weeks passed, and Alex grew more confident. Through mentoring, he discovered that learning English wasn't just about grammar, it was about expressing himself. One day, he stood up in class and shared a story he had written. The class clapped, and I could see pride in his eyes. That's when I realized mentoring wasn't just about helping others, it was about inspiring them to see their own potential. Alex's transformation inspired me too. I started mentoring other students, guiding them through their challenges, and watching them grow. Now, every time someone asks me why I spend so much time mentoring, I tell them about Alex. Mentoring isn't just teaching. It's about connection, encouragement, and growth for both the mentor and the student. Alex still writes stories today, and he often says, "Thank you for mentoring me." But the truth is, mentoring him changed my life just as much as it changed his.
The unexpected apprenticeship. When I was 18, I dreamed of becoming a chef. But in my small town, there were no cooking schools. One day, I heard about an apprenticeship at the town's only restaurant, Bella's Bistro. An apprenticeship? I didn't know much about it, but it sounded like my only chance. I walked into the restaurant, nervous but determined. Bella, the head chef, looked at me skeptically. "An apprenticeship here isn't easy," she said. "It's long hours and hard work. Are you ready for that?" I nodded, unsure if I was ready but eager to try. The apprenticeship started the next day. I chopped vegetables until my hands ached. I washed endless piles of dishes and cleaned the kitchen until it sparkled. But I also learned, how I learned. Bella taught me knife skills, the art of seasoning, and how to plate food beautifully. First, I made many mistakes. I burned sauces, overcooked pasta, and even dropped an entire tray of desserts. Bella wasn't angry. Instead, she used every mistake as a lesson. "That's what an apprenticeship is," she said. "You learn by doing, even if it means failing sometimes." Months passed, and I started to feel confident. My apprenticeship taught me more than just cooking. It taught me patience, creativity, and resilience. Bella began trusting me with bigger tasks like designing the daily special. One night, Bella let me run the kitchen while she was away. It was the hardest, most exciting night of my life. At the end of the shift, the staff clapped, and I realized how far I'd come. Looking back, I know the apprenticeship wasn't just about becoming a chef. It was about finding myself. Bella's guidance changed my life, and I'll always be grateful for that unexpected apprenticeship.